Hello, my little wordlings. I have a little Frenchie, if you can hear him snorting away. So, this is my review of Beauty Tips from Moose Jaw by Will Ferguson. Will Ferguson is one of my favorite authors, and this book did not disappoint. It was funny and informative and heartfelt. He tends to walk that line with all his books, and I love it. As a Canadian, we make fun a lot of the US for not knowing their own history. But how much of our own history do we really know? It's so diverse and so spread out that there's things that we just never learn. For example, he talks about Vikings in Newfoundland, and they have a whole interpretive center where they think the first Vikings landed, and we didn't learn anything about Vikings coming to Canada in history class. But even if you go, when we learned about Aboriginal people in school, I learned about the Mi'kmaq. That's the other dog. Learned about the Cree, learned about Ojibwe. Didn't learn any. When I moved to Alberta, learning about the blood tribes, I didn't know that was a thing. You never learn about what's going on across the entire country. So this is a wealth of information. It's amazing. It's a good read. Highly recommended. Yes, Marvell wants to read it too. Do you want to read it too?
And now, crickets.
I like rusty spoons.
Now, given how much information was in this book, I did try to whittle it down to only a few things, because even just things from my own province that I didn't know was a little crazy. Even, just sites and different places to visit. So here we go. Okay, as usual, we have Miss Bronte with the literary critique, and we have our crystal skull of knowledge for all the new things that we can learn. First quote: warning, stay well back from cliff edge. Parents, children are your responsibility. Damn, just as I suspected. I should have read the fine print before we started having kids. Which is just emblematic of his writing, where it's talking about the surroundings, but he also has a sense of humor about everything. It's a John Deere hat sort of laced, with photos of souped up race cars on proud display along one wall. Hot rods in ribbled red, skanky pink, fluorescent, luminescent lime. Now, to be perfectly honest, I looked up skanky pink to see if it was an actual thing, but when you hear skanky pink, you kind of have that pink in mind. It's kind of a dirty Barbie kind of pink.
Oh, I'm a cat. I'm a sexy cat.
And now that I'm looking at what I wrote here, starting to think it was a John Deere hat sort of place, not a John Deere hat sort of lace.
You absolute imbecile.
I do not speak French in front of Sean. This is for the same reason I do not sing karaoke in public. If I'm going to exert that much effort for so little result, I would prefer to do it with few witnesses as possible. So Sean is his brother who lives in Quebec and speaks French. This is a feeling. This is a feeling that I think we can all relate to, that is actually just put into words. I'm sad to say I've had too many witnesses for a lot of my failures in life. Okay, next one. This is in regards to Quebec separatists. It's a remarkable sleight of hand, that one. A game of three-card Monty, a mix of fraud and finesse, played out on a national scale. This is, again, another beautiful way of describing something that's kind of sad. If anyone is not familiar with what happened back in the day with the Quebec separatists, they wanted to separate from Canada. They wanted to see Quebec as a distinct province, which also created language wars within the province of, at one point, only French could be on the signs. Then French and English could be on the signs, but the French had to be bigger. Like, even at one point, my grandmother and grandfather, they owned a tourist resort. They didn't want to put my grandfather's name on the sign because he had an English name that couldn't be translated into French. If you know anything about it, or if you want to look into it. I highly recommend the book "Oh Canada, Oh Quebec" from Mordecai Rickler. That was a good one. And Mix of Fraud and Finesse is the gist of that whole book, basically. Next one. No snow to deal with today, only fog, but the air is so thick we could probably shovel that. Isn't that a beautiful image? The air is so thick you have to shovel it. I love people who can play with imagery and in a few words conjure up something that immediately in the imagination. I don't have to sit there and ponder what he meant by this. I've seen that fog. I've been in that fog. That fog is awesome. Not separatist, he corrects, sovereignist. And yes, it is true. But everybody has been so nice. A smile surfaces, and then a tilt of the head as if to say, but of course. And in slow, precise English he says, we're always happy to have visitors. And here's the kicker, the line he's been waiting to deliver. From a foreign country. Now just back to, well, sovereignist, separatist, however you would like to describe them. So this is not necessarily part of his writing style, but so much as a quote from people he interviewed that he decided to include. The fact that he included this quote fits in with the other aspects of what he writes about separatists/sovereignists. So this gives you a really good idea of what side of the argument he's on without actually saying what side of the argument he's on. The cultural continuity of New Denmark is a remarkable achievement, even if it does involve pickling that which should not be pickled. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% well-versed in food from that area, but I've seen enough will you eat that type of YouTube videos to know the stuff that they do pickle that probably shouldn't be pickled. So I thought this was really well written. And it's probably not even that unique. Someone somewhere probably said this about other things. It conjures up not necessarily an actual item, but a taste or a feeling of eating something that you didn't particularly like. So this sentence does its job. Please note, one does not drink screech. One swallows it hard, the way one might ingest cough medicine or lighter fluid. Have you ever had Newfoundland screech? I don't get this. I always thought it tasted good. I think it tastes like black licorice, and I like black licorice, but I get why someone would say it's kind of like ingesting cough medicine, because there's a burn. And you feel the burn through the whole body. It goes to your stomach, then goes through your veins. It's not a drink for the night. It's a drink for the moment. Okay, I'm going to try to do this in a Newfoundland accent. Lord, the fat rendered from animals, as in fried in lard it was. Lard, our Savior, Christ the Redeemer, our Father in heaven, as in, Lord love us. And that is the extent of my Newfoundland accent. I have family in Newfoundland, and I've never seen it written down, but well, yeah, why is Lord, Lard, and Lard, Lord? Among many other little quirks of language in that area of Canada. Crowds clot the doorways and huddle on sidewalks as they map out the night's strategy. I don't think people use that word enough, clot. What an awful word, but perfect for this scenario, because it's not just that they're blocking the doorway. They're creating problems in the middle of these doorways for other people. So using the word clot is perfect, and I hope to remember to use that one day in a sentence. Next one. I'm homesick, and this is not my home. I think most of us have a place like that. I went to Victoria, British Columbia for one night, and I still think about it. I felt so at home when I was there. And I didn't even really do anything. It was the whole vibe of the city. And I miss it. even though I was there for less than 24 hours. So he was talking about St. John's, Newfoundland when he wrote this. And I think we all have that. Next one. Like moose everywhere, they carry with them a certain dignified ugliness. They are the inbred Habsburg monarchs of the animal kingdom, combining regal deportment with huge, misshapen noses. This should be on Tourism Canada's website. This is what a moose is. It is an inbred Habsburger with a misshapen nose. You see it now. You see the face on the moose. You see the moose on the face. They're one in the same now. This is inextricably linked in your brain for the rest of time. Yep. See? See? Now it's worse, isn't it? I had to take a break. My dog farted, and I'm pretty sure he's trying to kill me with it.
A dead body.
Freydis was pregnant at the time as well. And one of the cardinal rules of combat is never piss off a pregnant woman when she's holding a sword. Isn't that beautiful? So he's talking. So if you look at Freydis, she's actually an absolutely horrible person, and she killed so many people when she was pregnant. And it's kind of awesome, though. You know, it's so unexpected sense, but it's tragic. It's kind of the same feel you get when you're reading about a old-timey stabby people, serial killers. Yeah, there we go. Where you know it's bad, and they had, like, they're poor families of these victims and poor families of these serial killers. But it's kind of cool to read about it, and you're just a bit of a bad person, but not a horrible person, so you keep doing it. Are you a bad person if you do it? Let's not get into that right now. Go do that on Bailey Sarian's channel. Okay, what did we learn? I learned what potash was. An alkaline potassium compound, especially potassium carbonate or hydroxide. And this is the quote. The freighters of today ply the same Great Lakes. St. Lawrence transportation route opened up by the Nor'westers, with iron ore, potash, wheat, and timber having replaced furs as the trade goods of choice. And that's potash. And I'm glad I looked this up. I swear I kept thinking it was a food. It sounds like it should be a food. Isn't potash a food? It's got to be a food somewhere. Next one. So Thunder Bay, Ontario. This is the meaning of the name Thunder Bay. And that deep curve of water, the city's namesake, and Minke, Weckwid to the Ojibwe, and Baie de Tonnerre to the French, with the meaning the same in both languages, Thunder Bay. So yeah, water's just water loud. That's what it is. Toxoplasmosis, infection from a single-celled organism that can cause fever and swelling. And here's the quote. Traveling with Sean is very different from traveling with Ian. Ian's his other brother. Sean would never impersonate me for his own amusement. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't try to convince waitresses that I am suffering from a rare form of toxoplasmosis, which I'm not even sure is a real word. There's a chapter where he's traveling with his brother Ian, and it's awesome. So you can see that they just have this kind of relationship. Dyspepsia, upset stomach, indigestion. So I guess that's the fancy word for it that I've just never heard. I have dyspepsia. I got a sore belly. A hotel open to cater to these passengers, touting both freshwater and saltwater therapeutic baths of great virtue for curing dyspepsia. I would go to a spa if it just catered to something to help my stomach, because my stomach always hurts. So, it sounds quite beautiful. Even though I hate spas, I hate people touching me, I hate floating in water. Do whatever you need to. I'll go. Minaret. A tall, slender tower, typically part of a mosque. And this is the quote. The fields open up in front of us, and thin grain silos rise in the haze like minarets across the plains. I see what he was going for, but when I look at grain silos and I think of minarets seem so much more delicate and ornate, whereas silos seem so much more industrial and cold. I can't put that imagery together in my brain. Caterwauling makes a shrill howling or wailing noise like that of a cat. Okay, I'm gonna do it. This is what I was picturing.
How are you not embarrassed?
See, if they need another dead cat in a Tim Burton movie, call me, because that's what that was. That was a dead or a dying cat, or some sort of animal. I apologize to anyone watching this. And here's the quote. It's a boozy, brawling, caterwauling place. I haven't been to a bar like that in a long time. Skraelings. Word used by the Vikings to describe the first people they encountered in North America, i.e. the Inuit, to the most likely from the Norse word skra, meaning dried skin, to refer to the pelts worn by the Inuit. And this is the quote. A later expedition ended in a full-scale war between the Norse colonists and the Skraelings. And as I mentioned before, we think we know a lot about our history. I have never heard of this war. And this happened in Canada with unarguably the first Canadian people, and yet I know more about British wars. St. John's is closer to London than it is to Winnipeg, closer to Dublin than to Calgary, and not just in terms of distance. If you've been there, you kind of know what I mean. Like, even things my grandmother used to pour her tea in her saucer and drink it, and apparently that's like a Northern Ireland British thing. Like little anachronisms, maybe you could say, things like that. Kakabeka Falls. This is in Ontario. I have never heard of these falls, and they look absolutely gorgeous. Wee Canyon, which apparently is like our Grand Canyon in Canada. Look at that. Isn't that majestic? By the way, I put links to all these places in case you want to learn more about them. Sleeping Giant Provincial Park. Now, there was an episode of Care Bears. Okay, don't stay with me. And they told the story that it's apparently a pretty well-known fable/fairy tale of the giant who fell asleep in the poppy fields. And it was such a sad episode. And I read the story, and the story was sad, so now when I hear of this, I only think sad things. But it does look really pretty. And I expected fields of poppies, but there's no fields of poppies. This is Madawaska. This picture's from 1836. Although a renegade republic, Madawaska is also a peaceable kingdom. Now, Madawaska, I put a link in the description so you could read about it, because I also have a hard time understanding it. So there's three. It's kind of a town or a place that's almost split in three between Cape Breton and Canada and the United States, I think. Yeah, I gotta read more to understand it more, but it's three different cultures almost, but all living together peaceably. This is a touch-me-not. I have never heard of these before, so they explode if you touch them. And I think I put a video to one exploding down below. Okay, these are a bunch of whales he talked about. So this is a Finback Whale. This is a Humpback Whale. That one I've heard about before. Pilot Whale, which I'd never heard of. Looks like a Beluga almost. And a Minke, which is gigantic. And a Porpoise, which I'm familiar. And a Seal, which was part of his list, but not a whale, but who doesn't want to see a picture of a seal? And a blue whale, which is, they said they found one even bigger than the blue whale now that lived on Earth, so I can't wait to hear more about that. And the Beluga. So it's kind of like the pilot whale, but it's missing the fins. Okay, so I put page 202 because I want to read a little bit of what this man did, and this is the book he wrote. So, Slave, Now an Inhabitant of Canada. And again, this is something else. We learned about the Underground Railroad, and we learned how slaves escaped from the South into Canada. but that was it. What happened to them once they got here? Were they taken care of? Did they have jobs? Like, where did most of them settle? We didn't learn anything about that. So this is a book I cannot wait to read. And this is part of what Will Ferguson says. Henson made many perilous trips deep into the slave states of the American South to shepherd others to freedom, more than 100 slaves in all. His autobiography, The Life of Josiah Henson, formerly a slave, now an inhabitant of Canada, was published in 1849, and Harriet Beecher Stowe would later name it as one of the key sources she drew upon for her own abolitionist tale, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Like, how is this not a man every Canadian child learns about? He sounds freaking amazing. And I now want to read Uncle Tom's Cabin as well. Sacré Blues, An Unsentimental Journey Through Quebec. This is another book he recommends, and I really want to read it. He made it sound pretty great. This is another one. So the Irish in Newfoundland, 1600 to 1900, their trials, tribulations, and triumphs. What do we know about the Irish in Newfoundland? Nothing that we would learn in grade school or even in high school. Maybe they learn it in Newfoundland, but in the rest of the Canada, we're so focused on our province and learning our history that it's almost like we're separated into all our own little countries. And then, like, what did they say that Canada's a mosaic? And it's true, we're a mosaic. We're all little pieces of this beautiful picture put together. But how good is the picture if bottom piece doesn't know about, top left piece and doesn't know about 350 pieces into the right, I hope that made sense. Okay, the Book of Lists. So at the end of Beauty Tips for Moose Jaw, it shows the list that Will Ferguson contributed to this book. So this is the Canadian version. There's an American version too. He does giant objects beside Canada's roads. And my hometown is in there, Sudbury's Big Nickel. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review and learned a little bit of something new. And again, highly recommend the book, but I recommend anything by Will Ferguson. Highly recommend it. So I hope you have a steady brain day, and I will see you next time. Bye!